Midnight. A quiet hallway. Cold lights cast shadows on the walls. Everything seems normal. But that night, one of the world's darkest secrets was forever altered. August 10th, 2019. A man was found dead in his cell, and that man's name was Jeffrey Epstein. The official statement was simple: suicide. But people didn't believe it. Because that night, too many things had gone wrong. The cameras weren't working. The guards were asleep. And the cell was empty. Was it a coincidence? Or did someone prevent him from speaking? Jeffrey Epstein. From the outside, he was just a wealthy financier. But this story was about much more than money. Because Epstein's circle wasn't made up of ordinary people. Powerful people, very powerful people, were sitting at the same table with him. But no one could fully explain. How had this man gained such power? Epstein wasn't born rich. But in a short time, he amassed an incredible fortune. And then, his life changed completely. Private jets, luxury parties, exclusive gatherings. And with each passing day, stronger connections. But within this life, there was something invisible. A secret. And this secret was kept hidden for years. Epstein had a plane. But this was no ordinary plane. Over the years, it made numerous mysterious flights. And it was alleged that some powerful figures were on board these flights. The nickname given to the plane was quite chilling: Lolita Express. But the real question wasn't who was on board. The real question was, where were they going? In the Caribbean, a small island, isolated, quiet, and completely cut off from the outside world. The name of this island, Little St. James. But some people called it by a different name, Sin Island. This island looked like paradise from the outside. Turquoise waters, snow-white sands, and an endless silence. But there are some places, no matter how beautiful they may seem, the things they hide within render that beauty meaningless. Little St. James. It was quiet during the day, almost as if it were abandoned. But at night, everything changed. The locals said they saw boats approaching the island at night. Boats with their lights off, engines gliding silently, and then lights rising from the island. The sound of helicopters. In the middle of the night, shadows constantly taking off and landing. Non-stop movement. But the strangest thing was this: no one knew exactly what was going on. And perhaps no one really wanted to find out. For years, very few people spoke about this island. But as time went on, some voices began to speak out. People were talking, and the things they described were disturbing. Some witnesses said they had been taken to this island. Some stated that what happened there was not normal. But the most striking thing was how similar these accounts were. Different people, at different times, but the same fear, the same silence, the same details. And at that point, people realized this was no longer just a rumor. This was part of something much bigger. But still, this story didn't fully come to light for a long time, because they weren't facing an ordinary person. In the early 2000s, the silence was broken for the first time. Serious allegations surfaced against Jeffrey Epstein. Young girls said they had been abused by him. This was no longer something that could be ignored. A case was filed. The legal process began, and everyone thought the truth would come out. But then, something unexpected happened. Epstein received a very short sentence, and then he was released. This decision shocked people, because there were serious charges against him. But the outcome was far below expectations. That was the moment when people asked this question aloud for the first time: who is protecting this man? After this incident, Epstein's name became even more shrouded in mystery, because people were no longer just talking about the allegations, but also about his connections. Who was in his inner circle? Why was he so powerful? And most importantly, why could no one touch him? Some claimed that Epstein was connected to very powerful people. Others, however, believed he was merely a pawn That is, a part of a larger system. But none of these claims could be fully proven. And over time, the story faded back into silence. Until 2019, a case that had been on the verge of being forgotten for years was suddenly reopened. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested again, but this time, everything was much more serious. The charges were severe. The global media was fixated on the case, and people thought, this time, everything will come to light. The truths hidden for years, secret connections, names, perhaps for the first time, everything would be exposed. But no one could have predicted that the story would end this way. August 10th, 2019. Night began as usual. The high-security prison in New York. Thick walls, iron doors, and a system completely cut off from the outside world. This was a place from which no one could escape. And that night, in one of those cells, there was a very important man, Jeffrey Epstein. The hours dragged on. The hallways were silent. Footsteps echoed. Everything was under control. Or at least, that's how it seemed. But as the night wore on, the details began to shift. Small, seemingly insignificant details. When put together, they would form a much bigger picture. And that picture would never be fully explained. That night, things started to go wrong. First of all, the security cameras. It was claimed that some of the cameras weren't working. The recordings were missing. The footage was gone. This was a high-security prison. How could something like that be possible? Then, the guards. It was alleged that the 2 guards on duty that night were asleep. They were asleep in a prison in the middle of the night where a high-risk inmate was being held. The guards were asleep. And then, the strangest detail, Epstein's cellmate wasn't there that night. So that cell was completely empty. When all these details came together, people thought of just one thing. Could so many coincidences really be coincidences? Early morning, the prison was slowly waking up. But in that cell, something was wrong. The door opened. Someone entered. And Jeffrey Epstein was motionless. Soon after, the news spread. The cause of death was announced. Suicide. But this explanation didn't satisfy everyone, because there were too many unanswered questions, too many details left unresolved. And these details made the story even darker. Epstein's death wasn't just a news story. This event was an explosion. The internet, the media, everyone was talking about the same thing. Was this really a suicide? Because people knew Epstein wasn't just an ordinary person. He might have known too much. Too many names. Too many connections. Too many secrets. And if that was true, his speaking out could have been dangerous for some people. That's why some began to consider a different possibility. Was he silenced? After Epstein's death, one of the most talked about things was a list. Supposedly, a top-secret list. Some people claimed that Epstein had highly sensitive information about powerful figures, names, connections, and perhaps evidence. If such a list really existed, this list could have put even the world's most powerful people in a tight spot. But here's the strange thing. This list never fully came to light. Fragments, claims, leaks, but never in its entirety. And this made people wonder even more. If this list doesn't exist, why is everyone talking about it? But if it does exist, why hasn't anyone seen it? Some stories are forgotten once they're over. But there are some stories, no matter how much time passes, that never fade from people's minds. Jeffrey Epstein's story is exactly like that. A man died, but along with him, did the truth die too? Or is the truth still out there somewhere, locked away in a file? And perhaps the most terrifying possibility is this. The people who know the truth might still be among us. The truth isn't always hidden. It's just that you can't find it.